Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Corellian tradition. And this is Midday with Reverend Don. Welcome. And we do not particularly have a subject for today. I think I called the program This and That, and I figure I'm going to kind of roam around a little bit. And I want to remind you that as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can type your questions or comments into whatever platform you happen to be watching on, and they should appear here in my chat room. I've noticed that occasionally that is not always true. I don't understand why. Hello to Janet in the chat room. One of the things I normally do is I go through many of these platforms and like the different broadcasts and all of the comments. But I noticed yesterday on one of the broadcasts, one person making comments had never shown up in the chat room, and all the others had. I don't understand that, but you can see the chat room right beside me, so you'll know who's here and who I'm responding to. And I've said before, I rather like this particular format. One of the things I'm doing starting this week is I am rebroadcasting once again Best of Reverend Don's Vlog. And I think we've done 3 of them so far. And hello to Nikki in the chat room. It's good to see you. And I'm doing this partly because I asked people if they'd like me to do it, and they said yes. So I'm planning to continue doing this, and hopefully you will enjoy them. I picked them up from September 12th of year 12 Aquarius, or 2012 AD, and we'll continue them forward toward the point at which they ended, which will take us a good bit of time. And then perhaps we'll start over from the beginning, because that was not the beginning of the vlog. The vlog was a very interesting experience. I did it for a solid 10 years. I started it when I was in Salem. And when I started, it was 7 days a week. Over time, it dropped down to 6 days and then 5 days and so forth. And hello to Arlene in the chat room. It's good to see you, Arlene. Because over time, although I loved the vlog, it also became a bit of a grind. Doing a vlog 7 days a week is a lot. And like I say, over time, it got a little bit less frequent. Eventually, it became fairly infrequent, which is when it stopped. But we ran it for a full 10 years before we got there. We're currently in our 19th year as a YouTube channel. Soon to hit our 20th. We actually, Magic TV, now Corellian TV, began before it was a YouTube channel. It began on its own platform. Hello to Gwenny. And we went several months on that platform. Hello to Janet. It's good to see you, Janet. Janet Gann. And Janet Winston says, YouTube seems to be a bit delayed. There might be a connection problem somewhere. I noticed when I started the broadcast, my video seemed a bit delayed. It doesn't seem so now. But short of stopping and starting again, I'm not sure what to do for it. But as I say, we started on our own platform, and it was our original desire with Magic TV to be a platform for other people's videos. We were trying to do the thing that YouTube itself eventually did. And we were very close, actually, to doing it. We were not able to put together the last necessary piece, and by that time, YouTube had become a thing, and we decided that it was better to join them. And we've been there, well, for 19 years since. And of course, on many other platforms as well. And it's been an adventure. And we've done several long-running programs. Living the Wiccan Life ran for a number of years and has a number of interesting episodes. And you can look that up in our morgues under either uh, LWL or Living the Wiccan Life, and find most of those episodes. I think it ran to like 60 some episodes. Originally at like one or two per week. And it includes going to a lot of events, a lot of interviews. I'm still getting a little bit of delay in the video. And hello to Donna Geode Andrews, who is joining us from Minnesota. It's good to see you, Donna. And yeah, that was fun to do too. And our interviews with Raymond Buckland are part of Living the Wiccan Life. Although we do still have some footage with Buckland that's never been broadcast, and one of these days we'll get it put up. Many of our interviews with Olivia Robertson are also on Living the Wiccan Life. Reverend Don's vlog came later, and to some extent they overlapped. And when I started Reverend Don's vlog, the idea was to be a look into my life, but my life is boring. I'm basically a workaholic, and there just wasn't much to see. Because, I mean, things were advancing. At that time, I was creating the World of Witches Museum, so there were at first some things to see. But, you know, those things developed gradually, and I found it necessary to find other content, and people were asking questions. And I found answering their questions to be, for me, the best content, and also what I most enjoyed doing. I still quite enjoy doing that. So if you have any metaphysical questions, feel free to ask them. We had one the other day. But once I settled into that format, for the most part, Reverend Don's vlog never departed from it again. There were some times when the vlog followed me to events. And hello to Steve in the chat room, Steve Taylor. And Steve says, I always get a lot from this. Thanks for being here. Thank you, Steve. I enjoy hearing that. And, you know, one of the reasons I'm doing this is what I constantly say, doing that next right thing, trying to do something positive in the world and knowing that it makes a difference to people is the number one thing that will keep me doing it. If I thought that it wasn't making a positive difference, I would probably stop doing it. I've been talking about leadership quite a bit lately, and I really am today too. It just may not be obvious. And I plan to continue talking on that subject as long as people want to hear it. So let me know if you're enjoying that topic, if there are other things you'd like to hear me talk about. And I'm sure it will be a mix as we go forward. Tomorrow will be our weekly roundup of stories. I remember seeing a very interesting story earlier this week. I didn't make a note of it though, so it'll be a clue whether I can find it again. But there are so many interesting things happening that I should have some good things to say this weekend. On Sunday at, let me check my calendar. Yeah, Sunday at 3 p.m. Central. I think it's 3 p.m. Central. We have the Pagan News broadcast. So I hope that you'll join us for that. And that will be dealing with issues in the news that are of interest to our community. So I made the comment a moment ago that although I'm not talking about a single subject of leadership, the things I'm talking about all really do have to do with it. Reverend Don's vlog and before it, Living the Wiccan Life, in my opinion, were definitely part of my career in leadership. They were done to help people, which is what leadership is all about. And they were done to help people to be able to connect with a community that many of them were geographically or socially isolated from. They were done to interview people who at that time were not often being interviewed on video. Before the video, we did years of radio as well, particularly at the Pagan, who has a new show coming up on Sunday, I believe, on the subject of prophecy, which will be interesting. Um, but this too is part of leadership. And I was saying the other day, part of leadership is actually leading by example. And when we talk about leadership, we're not talking only about being in a quote position of leadership. We're talking about just leadership in your own life. Because you don't have to be in a position of leadership to be a leader. You have to be a person who, through um, your words and actions, influences others, preferably for the better. But we just need to watch the news to know that not everyone who can be called a leader is necessarily affecting things for the better, but we hope it's for the better. And I hope that if you are a leader, whether in a position of leadership or simply in your own life, that you are using it to make a better world. That's what I have tried to do. And I had a rather philosophic evening the other night, as I sometimes do. And I was asking myself, have I really made that positive a difference? Because I can look at some people that I have worked with who certainly did not come out the other end for the better. And I was asking myself, why was this the case? Someone I once worked with recently passed away. I have no particular sympathy for this person because of how that situation eventually worked out. Though, of course, as a human being, I can regret their passing. But I have to ask myself, with this sort of situation, did I really make things better? And I came to an answer to that. I often say that Ed the Pagan, my very good friend and long-term life partner, is a karma factory. I've been saying this for years. Everything that man touches, he speeds up its karma. And I realized, thinking about it, that I am the same thing. Not as dramatic, not as fast. But it does seem, looking back, that all the people I've worked with ended up becoming their truest self. Sometimes that meant rising to their truest self, and sometimes it meant falling to it. Um, and as a leader on the subject of leadership, what I would say to you is that whether the people you work with rise to their highest self or fall to their lowest self, um, however they express their truest self, that's about them. It's not necessarily about you. Um, I look at several of these people and realize that situations happened for them having nothing to do with me, um, in ways that were utterly unpredictable. And usually on the first day of a rise in position. And that's pretty breathtaking. And to me, that must be karma. It's the hand of spirit. Otherwise, it would have developed more slowly. Um, but yeah, I've kind of come to the conclusion that I'm a bit of a karma factory myself. And for whatever that means. Now, Donna says, I am a leader in many things, but I'm that though constantly fearing those that like to make trouble for me. I tend to not fulfill all that I can do because of the fear of nasty people also stealing my words. Well, the world's full of nasty people. I've certainly met plenty of them. I was just talking about a few of them. Um, but in my opinion, you can't let that hold you back because they're always there. And if I let that hold me back, there'd be far fewer things I'd ever done. And hello to Fox for Witch in the chat room who says, I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. I hope so too. Hello to Brujo Quitado. It's good to see you. Yeah, I mean, people there are all kinds of people who, for want of a better way to put it, as Donna has said, may want to make trouble for you. Usually, it's more because of them than because of you. Often it's caused by jealousy, it's caused by their own fears in many cases. Sometimes it's caused by their unfulfilled shadow work. So, in thinking about this subject, I have to say, to all those people who work with me, do pay attention to your shadow work, because I've seen so many people trip themselves up over having not done their shadow work and being tripped by their ego. Um, there's nothing wrong with ego. Ego is only your sense of self. But when you have a wounded ego, you must work to heal it. It's the wounded ego that becomes bad for people and often causes them to do unworthy things. It causes them, when they suddenly feel confident, to attack others rather than to try to build others. Um, when they feel that they're in a state where everyone is applauding them, they do immature things that undo the good they've done. It is important to deal with the wounds in your ego. We all have wounds in our ego. We must deal with them. I've done so many shows on shadow work. I don't want to go too deep into it. But, no matter who you are, you should be paying attention to that. And Steve says, great point. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. I'll tell you that even after all these years, I still do shadow work on a regular basis. Should do more of it. And as I always tell people, just because you've done a lot of shadow work doesn't mean you're not going to need more, because as long as we are alive, we keep adding to that shadow. And hopefully, as long as we're alive, we will also keep healing it, keep integrating that energy back into our full selves. It's just part of life. And again, I have seen so many people rise to positions of authority, positions of leadership, and then throw it all away over unresolved shadow work, over immaturity, childish behavior, unwillingness to agree to disagree when it would be the necessary choice. Now, the other day I was pointing out, there are times you can't agree to disagree. But generally speaking, it is the better path. If you're in an organization which has many people in it, you may not like everyone. Sometimes you have to agree to disagree. Sometimes you just have to deal with the fact that certain people may not be exactly what you'd want them to be. They're under no obligation to be exactly what you want them to be, as long as they're behaving decently. And so often I have seen people of authority in the metaphysical world thinking that anyone who isn't exactly what they think they should be, which is what they think they are themselves, is somehow unworthy rather than merely different. And this is such a self-defeating thing in any kind of organization. And it so often leads to organizations that are mere Greek choruses. They're filled with people who have exactly the same ideas and skills, and therefore can only do certain things. If you want to have a strong society, a strong community, or a strong organization, you need a lot of different types of people with a lot of different types of skills. And if you insist that everyone must be exactly like yourself, you're never really going to be successful. Not with anything that's beyond your own scope. And I'll give you an example. I am not a great computer programmer. In fact, beyond the paint by numbers level, I'm not a computer programmer at all. And yet, for 20 odd years, close to 30 years, everything I've been involved in is computer-oriented. Um, Ed the Pagan, who I mentioned, not a computer programmer. But we always welcomed those who were and worked with them, which allowed the things we were doing to do things we could not have done ourselves. In recent years, I've been very big on trying to promote the arts and music. Now, obviously, in the arts, those of you who are familiar with my career, I'm a visual artist, always have been. But a musical artist, not so much. But my attitude has been, if we want to have a robust musical scene, we must encourage that. We must attract those skills. And it's not a skill that I necessarily have myself. And what's wrong with that? We all have different skills. And to have a robust organization, you must have room for that. If you don't, you're going to have problems. And very often, you're also going to find people who have different attitudes. But as long as you all get along, as long as everyone can work together, it doesn't matter that you have different attitudes. You don't have to agree on every subject. It's ridiculous to think that you should. It's ridiculous to think you could. Um, People are far more differentiated than that. Um, and if you have a desire to be a leader, whether in your personal life or in an organization, certainly do not forget that you're not going to get anywhere if the only people you're willing to deal with are carbon copies of yourself. Even if you're one of those Renaissance people who can do many things, there'll be things you're going to turn out to need that you cannot do yourself. And your doors must be open to those who can do it. And, you know, if people disagree with you on certain things, what's wrong with that? People disagree all the time. Now, so I said the other day, one of my favorite quotes is a paraphrase of William Baldwin, the great author. And the paraphrase is, we can disagree and still love each other as long as what we disagree over is not my fundamental right to exist. Obviously, you cannot agree to disagree with someone who thinks you should not exist. But the vast majority of places you're going to have disagreements, you can probably find a way to continue to exist. And the idea that everyone must have exactly the same point of view is not constructive. Now, sometimes you'll meet people, and I think this is partly what Donna was talking about earlier, people who are disagreeing simply to try to cause a disruption in order to gain attention. This is a common tactic. That's something you ultimately are not going to be able to deal with, but it's not the disagreement that's the problem. It's the effect of using it as a political tool. It's the disruption that is the problem. If you are running an organization of any sort and it's constantly disrupted, it's not going to be able to do anything. It's very important. And I was talking the other day about how during the many years that I was actively engaged as first priest of the Corellian tradition, I always felt that one of my primary jobs was keeping peace between all of the disparate people who were involved. And, I still feel very strongly that this is one of the greatest skills of anyone who is running an organization. Because if you don't have disparate people involved, you're not going to be able to do very much. And if you can't get everyone to get along, you're not going to be able to do very much. Donna says it's emotional abuse. And yes, I'm inclined to agree with that. Many years ago, Ed the Pagan wrote a book called The Witch Wars Defense Manual. And I've mentioned that from like 1990 to 2007, we faced at least one witch war every year in all those years. and learned a lot of things. And Edward did what almost nobody was willing to do. He put it on paper. He put down the common tactics. He put down ways that you can react to those tactics. One of the big ones is to try to cause a fight with a more prominent person in order to um, raise your own position. You'll often see people with no reputation to speak of, no background to speak of, attacking far more prominent people because they're hoping to get a response which will make it look like they're on an equal basis with that person and will give them a moral equivalency. And of course, if you are that more prominent person, you must not respond. And hello to Renee in the chat room. It's good to see you, Renee. Um, and yes, I would feel that is basically emotional abuse. Most of the Witch Wars techniques are pretty damned abusive. That's why our community has had the problems that it's had. Um, and yeah, I mean, when you have someone who's doing that, you have to find ways to deal with it. But you also have to try to be, in my opinion, an organization of rules, not people. And you need to follow your rules once you've established them. And having done that, well, I recently saw a situation where someone was objected to over something they had done in a particular organization, but it was completely within their rules. The person had not broken any rule, nor had they caused any particular problem. Um, and the organization was completely correct to say, this is our policy. We have simply followed it. You need to have policies and you need to follow them. And having people who think that because they're in a certain position that they're going to break those policies will damage your organization. Now, Donna says, this is what happened to me many years ago. It still hurts me. I understand that. My advice to you is to do some shadow work. Until you do that shadow work, this will always hold you back. This is what shadow work is for. It will help you to release that pain and move forward. I am a great believer in forgiveness, but forgiveness and forgetting are not the same things. Forgiveness is letting go of what is binding you. It doesn't mean you forget what happened. It doesn't mean that you don't work to prevent it from happening again. It does mean that you don't let it bind you in perpetuity. So with that, I see we've filled our half hour. I guess I had no particular trouble finding things to talk about, and I hope that you found it a useful conversation. Tomorrow will be our roundup of stories from the week, and it's certainly been an eventful week. And we'll see what I talk about tomorrow. Probably not the biggest stories, but then you never know. I might, because there are some important messages there that are not partisan in character that maybe I will talk a little bit about. But with that, I want to thank you for joining me, and let us close with our prayer as we always do. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we ask you to help us to always rise to our best selves, even when the people around us are not rising but falling to their true selves. Help us to rise. Help us to be better. Help us to make the world better. And help us to understand that everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and to try to be embracing whenever possible of the strengths and forgiving whenever possible of the weaknesses, while remembering all of the good lessons of leadership. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love and thanks. knowing you are always with us, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. I thank you for your presence. May you be blessed now and always.